Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Resilience Hub. We are delighted to have you today attending this session on extreme heat in cities. And as you know, this is a topic in which the Adrienne Arsht-Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center has been working for some years now in view of how much of a problem it is today, but more importantly, how much of a greater problem it will be tomorrow. Many people probably are unaware of the fact that extreme heat is the #1 climate-driven hazard killer in the world. Heat kills more people than floods, than hurricanes, than forest fires combined. That's how much of a danger heat represents. The last 8 years have been the hottest on record on human history. And actually, 2023 has been the hottest year yet. And as we know, heat waves are becoming increasingly severe, longer, and intense. That is unfortunately a trend that will become worse and worse over time as climate change keeps becoming evident. 3.5 billion people will be exposed to extreme heat-related risks by the year 2070, 1.6 billion of whom will be living in dense urban areas. Extreme heat is particularly visible in cities. Why? Because of the urban heat island effect, by which urban infrastructure, pavements, pollution, and the lack of vegetation make urban areas hotter than rural areas or the countryside. So that's why it is so important to focus our extreme heat-related efforts in cities. And that's why the topic that we will be addressing today is so timely and so relevant. And we will be doing so with 4 fantastic women leaders on this topic. 4 fighters on the climate change agenda that have been undertaking a lot of very innovative actions to protect people, the economy, and jobs from extreme heat-related risks. It is my great honor to introduce to you the Lord Mayor of the city of Melbourne in Australia, Sally Capp, who joins us today. A big round of applause for Lord Mayor Capp. She's going to be giving us opening remarks today to set the scene on this topic. We are keen on hearing from Lord Mayor Capp about the outstanding record of the city of Melbourne in tackling climate change and particularly tackling extreme heat. We know how much exposure the city of Melbourne has to natural hazards caused by climate change, but we are impressed by the achievements of your city, Lord Mayor, and we are really delighted to have you here and hear the experience of Melbourne in addressing this huge threat for humanity. Welcome.
Wow, what an introduction, Maurizio. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be with you today to make some opening remarks for this fantastic panel that we have ahead of us. I'm excited to be at COP28 and to be able to make some comments as we kick off this incredible panel and deepen our knowledge about the initiatives being taken to reduce heat and heat impacts in cities. Now, in Melbourne, just to give you some context, it surprises many people that heat is the #1 killer of people and a major driver of issues around our city. And I wanted to give you some context. Just before the pandemic hit the world, we suffered the most incredible bushfires right across Australia, caused by heat and drought that absolutely ravaged so many regional parts of Australia. And many people might then think, what sort of impact does that have on a city? But of course, as those fires burned, we went from having one of the highest air qualities in the world in Melbourne to having at that time the lowest air quality as a result of the smoke and fire haze that came into our city. It also impacted Sydney and is estimated to have had about a $500 million impact on our local economies as a result of that poor air quality. We're also seeing other impacts, of course, from heat. It's estimated that we will lose about 35% of our current tree stock if it wasn't for the fact that we're taking action now, but that action needs to happen more quickly and at scale for us to not only save those trees, but add net trees to be able to cool our city. Our commitment is to cool our city by 4 degrees by 2036. We've also seen in our worst heat year of 2009, I haven't calculated 2023 yet, but we had 374 deaths directly from heat, and we had a 50% rise in ambulance call-outs. So the impact on our health system as well as individuals and their health is seen right there through heat. And of course, we all know the impacts on parks and natural habitats. We're seeing more and more of threatened species become extinct as a result of heat and what that does for our local parks. I am really pleased to say that adaptation mitigation efforts are underway. Tiffany Crawford, our Chief Heat Officer, working with the Adrienne Arsht-Rockefeller Resilience Centre and our colleagues there who are absolutely awesome in leading and sharing, means that we are taking many, many steps forward to achieve our aims. We've estimated about $1 billion in programs and projects that we would like to undertake, but of course cities and organisations aren't well funded for climate projects full stop, but heat projects in particular are underfunded, and again another fantastic initiative through the Arsht-Rockefeller Resilience Centre is to really build up capacity for funding projects. Some of the projects we have underway, the urban forest project, which I absolutely love because it activates our community and private sector as well. We are improving water quality and efficiency in our local parks and gardens. We are trialling cool roof technologies to bring down temperatures in our city during very, very hot summers. And we're ensuring that every single neighbourhood has a drought-ready park, has access to an extreme weather refuge for people who are most in need, and has heat-safe corridors for people to walk and travel through at times of extreme heat. These are all fantastic initiatives that I know Tiffany will speak more about in a moment. I did want to, if I haven't already said it before, all of us here should say thank you to everybody involved in the Adrienne Arsht-Rockefeller Resilience Centre for the leadership that they show in helping cities respond better to extreme heat events. We're really proud to be part of this Heat Officer program, and I'm looking forward to learning more from Chief Heat Officers from cities around the world. Back to you, Maurizio, and thanks for the opportunity.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. Your leadership is really inspiring and entices us to keep doing this work, which, as you know, is part of what's called the City Champions for Heat Action Initiative by Arsht-Rock. And we are really proud of having 9 chief heat officers around the world now, working on the ground in different continents, in different contexts. But they are not only doing great work to save lives, to support their communities, to protect urban infrastructure from extreme heat-related risks, but they are also sharing knowledge, information, and good practices that could be replicated all over the world to protect cities from heat. So thank you so much for the amazing work you are all doing, and we would like to learn more about that this afternoon. I would like to start with Lenio Miribili, whom, as you know, is the Global Chief Heat Officer at UN Habitat. And Lenio has been working for many years in spite of her young age. She has been working for many years now on climate. She's a true believer in the battle against climate change, She was the deputy mayor of Athens, and then she was the chief heat officer of the city of Athens, and now she's the global chief heat officer. So I would like to ask you, Len, in your view and from your experience, what's the scale of the threat at the local level? And now that you are performing this global role, what's the importance of the connection between local actions, actions on the ground, with global advocacy efforts on heat?
So I'll start. Thanks, Mauricio. Thanks for your great introduction, and it was great to listen to the mayor from Melbourne, the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. So I would like to start with a small piece of data about Athens, which I found out from the Red Cross, that we're working really closely in Athens to plan and implement different initiatives. They said that 83% of the people that die from extreme heat in Athens are people that are living alone at home. And I was thinking that always I have this like number in my mind about how such a sad statistic that is, that we have a really a large number of people that are aging in our city, and we have about 20% of our people are over 60. So the fact that 20% of our city is people over 60 really makes it enormous. An enormous number of people that are exposed and vulnerable to heat. And you add to this, of course, the people that have pre-existing conditions, health conditions. Mental health conditions are also extremely exacerbated during heat waves. People that work in low-paying jobs in general and are usually working under really bad conditions of heat and sun exposure. We also have women that are particularly vulnerable because when they're pregnant, but also in other times, because again they're more exposed to heat because of the way that they have many more things to do. Little children, babies that cannot adjust their temperatures, but also little children that cannot go out to play, because they are putting themselves at risk. So if you take all these populations and you look at the fact that our temperatures are rising in much faster ways than we expected, much faster than we expected. As you said, 2023, we had the hottest day in July. We had the hottest surfaces of the ocean ever measured. We had the hottest summer in the northern hemisphere ever recorded. 2023 is going to be probably the hottest year ever recorded. And a couple of weeks ago, we went over the 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial time. So we actually know that people have not been living in this type of conditions ever in the history of the planet, from the different data that we have. So locally, we have to figure out who are our vulnerable populations. Not every city has 20% over 60 years old. A lot of cities have a lot of young people. A lot of cities have people living in informal settlements. A lot of cities have a large informal economy sector, which again usually tends to be with people much more exposed. So you have to see where is your vulnerability, where is your exposure locally. And then you have to manage the type of policies, the different type of governmental and financial solutions that can actually go and find those people, and that's not simple. So this COP is a COP that is significant because these issues, more than ever before, are discussed, and I know that, Mauricio, you're part of a big effort to do this, of how can we really figure out how funding can actually go to the local people that actually need it.
Yes, thank you so much, Lenny. That's a key challenge, right? How to channel necessary resources for cities to undertake the kind of agendas needed for protecting people, the economy, jobs, infrastructure, so on and so forth, from extreme heat.
Yeah, I just
Thank you.
talked about the health part, but you're right, there's a lot of other aspects that we have to look into.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Lenio. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Bushra Afrin from the city of Dhaka North. So she's our newest chief heat officer, and we're really proud of what she's doing in Dhaka North. So Dhaka is a city that is well known for being extremely hot. Now the question is, how do you manage to convince people that such temperatures are not normal and that actually heat is a threat and is a deadly one?
Is this on? Oh, it's on. I think you're right. If you've grown up in Dhaka, then you lived all your life in hot and humid weather. We have to acknowledge that there's a big gap in awareness due to a lot of things, mainly their lack of accessible education, that not a lot of people are aware about the difference between safe heat and unsafe heat. So the first step is to build that awareness, build that trust between community members, especially before that, you need to identify, as Lenio said, who are the most vulnerable in your community, who are the people who are most vulnerable, and have those conversations with them in an accessible way. And that includes offering solutions as well, not just this is the difference and this is the line that when you cross it, it's too late to go back. Because at a certain point, if you're exposed to heat long enough, you will not be able to go back. You will suffer irreversible damage. And that is something that a lot of people in Dhaka aren't aware of. So I think that conversation is scary, it's intimidating, but the key here is to offer solutions and also recognize that not everybody has the means to access those solutions, to cool themselves or to seek shade or to drink water. In Bangladesh, in Dhaka, let me just talk about Dhaka, water is not free, and it's clean drinking water is not widely available. You have to spend money to get water. So there's a lot of things that we can do as policymakers, as decision makers, and as well as people who are able to connect with important stakeholders, bring them to the table and create interventions and create projects that could improve vulnerable people's access to cooling solutions. So I think a mixture of all of that, like raising that awareness, having those conversations, from a health point of view as well as from an innovative point of view, that here are things that you can do to access those solutions, and also talk to different stakeholders and say this is how you can help your own people, and work together to create those effective solutions.
Yeah, and that's a big challenge.
Yeah, it is challenging.
Yes,
for sure.
particularly in a city like Dhaka, where
Yeah.
there's so many different issues that particularly the poor population have to deal with. So,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Tiffany Crawford is one of the 2 chief heat officers in the city of Melbourne. And we're really proud to say that we are present in 6 different continents with chief heat officers now. And this is a community that is getting more and more attention globally. So, Tiffany, in your view, why this role is important? Why a city should consider appointing a chief heat officer?
Thanks, Mauricio. We were appointed about a year ago, and what I can say, as the Lord Mayor just spoke about so brilliantly, and she's a hard act to follow, is that Melbourne has in fact been working on many climate initiatives for some time, but it's also been working on heat. And we've been doing our heat work across our health branch, engineering and climate change. But since our appointment, Krista and I have been able to bring together a group of the council to really focus our attention on a shared objective. And it has elevated the issue of heat in a way that really it hasn't before. And I'd say as well, joining the network of chief heat officers has been brilliant, because we've been able to learn from each other, to be inspired and really push ourselves even further than we would go before. But that focused attention, both within our organisation, on our communications, and within our municipality, and outside of the municipality within Australia, in bringing attention to this really critical issue of heat health, but also in building a city that will be resilient for the future and for future generations, has been pretty remarkable. So I would encourage all cities to consider a role that is similar in scope, and to really elevate the issue in terms of the public's understanding, a councillor's understanding, and your administrations.
Can I jump in? Oh, me too. If she's,
No, for Tiffany, because Tiffany has said something that was really cool, which I think you should remember and say it again, about how it has opened up the possibility to do things about climate in ways that we need.
Yes.
It absolutely
Please
has.
say that. Say that.
Yeah, I mean, it has. We've been the directors. My job share partner, Krista Milne, who's watching from home in Australia. Hello, Krista. She and I are the directors of climate change and city resilience also. And so it's been a fantastic synergy in terms of that elevation on a particular part and component of our role. So we have been working on climate change for some time. And I say we, but we're part of a brilliant team. And our teams and the people and the teams that came before us have been working on this issue. But in the last year, the understanding and the enthusiasm and the support that has really been garnered around the issue of heat is truly exceptional.
Yeah, and something that I would like to highlight about the city of Melbourne and their process of appointing chief heat officers is the fact that it was actually the city council, the one that discussed and approved the city's partnership with Arsht-Rock, number one, and the council approved the appointment of chief heat officers. And I think this is a great example of how can you institutionalize these processes in a way as to make them public policies. That's the way in which you make sure that these are long-lasting efforts. So I think that's a pretty remarkable example from the city of Melbourne. Please tell the Lord Mayor that I said this.
I will do.
But I think definitely it's something that other cities should be looking at as an example. Lenio, you have said that cities are not built for this climate era. And I agree. How do you see the future of cities, given the fact that extreme heat and other climate hazards will be getting, more and more harsh over time?
Well, I always try. I'm an optimist, and I always try to keep an optimistic view, and to keep fighting for the better cities, right? And for the cities of the type of cities of the future that can be more beautiful than the ones that we live in now, and much more friendly to animals and humans and other animals and plants. So I think that the cities of the future that can survive the kind of climate conditions that we're heading towards, and that we're already in, but it's going to get worse. We know that before it starts getting better, are going to be cities where you have a radical invasion of nature into the cities. So we have to reconceive the way that we have nature in the city, which is now parceled out in little kind of spaces, and kind of figure out ways that our cities are starting to integrate nature in ways that are much more robust, but also much more innovative. And our cities have to change. They have to change, as you said before, the types of materials that they're using. They have to retrofit a lot to survive the different types of extreme conditions that they're going to be going through. They have to adapt, and we do need a lot of innovation, and we need to fast kind of streamline innovation into the types of industries that are already working in our cities. So it's easy to discuss, and it's easy to create a vision, I think, of something that is more livable and more sustainable and more equitable, because it always has to the cities that can survive in the future are cities that are also more equitable. Because we know that social resilience is actually what can protect people much better than amazing infrastructure. We know again and again that during times of hardship, it's the well-knit communities and the good social fabric that actually helps people survive and helps people deal with hardship. So if you have a city that doesn't have equity, and that is a city that's split up and really segregated and divided, you basically are creating a non-sustainable during crisis environment. So nature, social equity, and social cohesion, thank you, because disinformation and misinformation is really wreaking havoc in our cities and in our societies, and so that's another front to fight. And innovation that kind of comes quickly is streamlined into the way that we deal with our cities.
Follow-up question.
And no cars. No private ownership of cars, or very limited private ownership of cars. We have to really slowly abandon that.
Follow-up question. There are some cities that are doing interesting things on nature-based solutions and that kind of thing. But how to scale up those kind of initiatives? I mean, my concern is that I don't see the conditions for cities to really scale up those kind of actions, and to the magnitude needed.
True.
To really become drivers.
True.
In the battle against climate change and to protect people from increasingly severe natural hazards. So what do you think about that? I mean, how do we scale up that?
There's a lot of fronts that we have to deal with when we're talking about scaling up these nature positive cities, and we need to. A big issue is to bring up capacity for designing and implementing them, which a lot of cities don't really have. So building capacity is a very big issue. A second issue is to figure out the type of tools that can help cities finance these. And this have to also be innovative, because we have to figure out how to kind of deal with this concept of not real return of investment, in the sense that we've known it in all other kinds of investments. So we need to kind of bring funding in for these types of things that has a new type of thinking. And there's a lot of discussion of really linking mitigation with adaptation in those areas in ways that are really significantly alter the narrative of how we do things and how we finance things, so that we can go forward. We really have to do it fast, and we're not there yet. Yeah. So I think the two main things are the capacity of actually designing it, bringing multiple teams into cities that are ecologists, etc. So doing a much more multidisciplinary kind of capacity building in cities, and finding new ways of financing that are crucial. I mean, I want to hear what my colleagues would say about this, because I'm probably forgetting something.
Not at all, but I completely agree with you. And I think that the scale of the transition that's required around nature-based solutions and adaptation is monumental. Yeah. And there's something in there around us all working harder together to share the stories and the importance of nature-based solutions. I'm yet to meet a person that doesn't love a tree. And no matter when you talk, when you talk, well, there are some practical reasons, and I suppose sometimes lots of engineers find them very impractical. But when you think about our communities, and given that the 70% of humanity will live in cities by 2050, it is incumbent upon us as city practitioners to be delivering cities that are livable, that are resilient, and that are healthy. And people want nature. They want nature around them. And if they can't access nature within their home, they want quick access to nature. So the scale of it is monumental, and it's not one that can be met alone by cities. Even for a city like us, we need to partner with state governments, in Australia with federal governments and with philanthropy. I'm really interested to uncover and unpack what the opportunity is around investment in cities. Is there a return on investment that we're not yet sure of? So if anyone has ideas, we're very keen to talk. But there's something there around everybody's future and the way that we are developing the whole world. I heard an incredible statistic that by 2050 we will have built a city the size of New York every month on the planet. And it's not sustainable in any way.
No, sorry.
Let me just. Yeah. No, go ahead, please. If it's on the
No,
same.
I just wanted to quickly add, absolutely, we need to take action, but I would urge central governments, as you said, cities can't do this alone. There's a massive challenge of accessing finance, especially when you want this money to be targeted towards vulnerable populations. There's a lot of politics involved, a lot of bureaucratic systems involved that you have to somehow bypass and then get into, and then I know that there are some countries that really believe in fighting against heat, but there's I still have yet to see a Bangladesh be right there with them. There's a lot of focus on cyclones and flooding and all of that, but heat still. I still feel like we need to take heat more seriously, and part of my job is to do that as well. I know we spoke about awareness, but a main part of that is when I was appointed as chief heat officer in my city, it sparked a massive and in the country, and everybody realized it was like even though we had and coincidentally and you were there, and we had just gone through the hottest heat wave ever, and so a lot of conversations started happening on heat, and that's when conversations also started happening about how do we finance projects the right way to have any effect on heat. And I think those are all very, very important discussions that we need to have.
No, absolutely.
We should say that you were there for
And
every
you
one
were
of
there,
the appointment of all of us, because you are behind this whole thing. So we should give him some.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's a
He's
team's
like
effort.
he's behind.
I wouldn't
he's
have
like
been here without
the
you, Mauricio.
mastermind behind it.
Well, actually, I would like to highlight the gender component of our CHO program, because it's really important. All of our chief heat officers are women, and that's not a coincidence. We know that women are particularly vulnerable to the effects of extreme heat, and we firmly think and believe that women should be at the forefront of addressing this topic and performing key leadership roles in climate action, and I think that our chief heat officers are an extraordinary example of that. Bushra, talking about gender, we know how much women suffer in the city of Dhaka because of heat. And we also know that you've been working with women, particularly in informal settlements, for many years now. Can you tell us about the specific reality that women suffer in the city of Dhaka because of heat, and particularly in informal settlements? That's something that I'm sure Sheila would really appreciate hearing about.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think we can look at it this way. Women are at the front line of climate change. Women are at the front lines of heat. They are the most vulnerable. And especially when you think of them being women from informal settlements, these women are often pressed for resources, very limited access to disposable income, very limited access to healthcare, and their health, and on top of healthcare, their well-being is not at the top of the priority list. It's family, tending to children, tending to husbands, tending to in-laws, money decisions, doing everything else, and then it's health. And oftentimes they get rushed to the hospital or the healthcare center when it's really, when it could have, when if it had been addressed sooner, that it would have been much better for them. Um, and I just want to say that because of this, they are at the front line of the heat problem. But so I wanted to do something that puts them at the front line of the solutions. So I wanted to, so I partnered up with so UNDP, on the other hand, had been working in these communities for a long, long time, and they had a platform made up of well, now there's 76,000 women who are members of this platform. It's the Livelihood Improvements Program. And these are all women who are leaders in their community. And you said, like, why it's so important that women are at the forefront of this? It's because women are so innovative. They are so intricately connected and invested in their communities. And when they took charge of this project, which was, by the way, it was I'm all over the place, but it was nature-based solutions that, we all know that nature-based solutions are, as you said, it's a radical solution to the heat problem. And these areas are so dense, informal settlements are so dense and with so little shade. The temperatures within these areas can go up to 12 degrees higher than surrounding areas within the city. So yeah, we thought that, well, let's go in and let's plant some trees. And we succeeded in planting 5,500 trees. And the unique aspect in this project was that the women brought out the community to be the growers of these trees. And at first, and this wouldn't have happened without them, because at first we thought that because there's lack of shade, let's plant trees which will give shade. Let's plant a lot of shade-bearing, dense canopy trees. And then their feedback to that was, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Nobody's going to grow these trees if they don't. It sounds very simple, but they want to. Nobody's going to look after them if they don't bear fruit.
Yeah, of course.
If they don't bear vegetables, if they don't give us something that is tangible. And so we worked with them, and it was this intense period of negotiation where we agreed on, the species of trees and all the different types of local and diverse and dynamic trees that would benefit not only them through shade, but also through fruit. And it sounds so simple, but it wouldn't have happened without their input. And this was just one of the ways that their feedback was so valuable. And we succeeded in incorporating all of this feedback because they were involved in it from the very beginning. They weren't added in there. It wasn't added in at the very end of the program. We worked together from the very beginning. And one of the other things that we had to ensure to make sure that that participation happened is to lower the barriers of participation. So these women are extremely hardworking, and they, as I said, have a million things to do. And we didn't want this project to be another thing that was cumbersome to their already busy, stressful lives. So we made sure that any meeting they had the option of both in person as well as they could join virtually. If they didn't have access to the internet, we set up spots for them to go in and join us there. They were always welcome to come into meetings with their children, because arranging childcare was another headache that they needed to have otherwise. We provided meals every time we met. They were provided the cost of transportation to get there. So as much as possible, we tried to make it easy for them to participate, because we had to acknowledge the differences in their situation, their economic and social situations. So I would say that this project was a real testament to see that how the dynamics of what it means to really work together and what it means to facilitate working together. And it's only when a local adaptation can only happen if you work together with the people who are the most vulnerable, and if they can somehow be equal partners in the work, then I think that they can really take ownership of that and lead the way. And they're now, right now, they're doing everything by themselves because they really feel that, you know, these trees are theirs. And it opened this gateway of a lot of future activities, you know. And we identified so many other problems by listening to them and by listening to each other. And it was a beautiful moment, really, of collaboration. So yeah, I'm excited to work further with them in the future. Yeah.
That's a big challenge, the one you have.
Absolutely.
But a very relevant one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tiffany, we know that technology is becoming more and more important for developing personal and community resilience. And we also know about the various initiatives that the city of Melbourne is promoting to implement different technologies to protect people from extreme heat. Can you tell us about that, please?
Sure. I'll actually start with one that's relevant to what you were just talking about. So we have urban forest precinct plans in Melbourne, which were developed with really long considered consultation with local communities. And that was understanding that we needed, or our urban foresters really needed to understand what people wanted to see in their local neighbourhood. In order for people to support that plan and that planting plan, but also to feel connected to one another. So I love that story. We use technology to do that in terms of following our urban forest's growth and the success of our urban forest. And every tree within our municipality has an identifier, which is you can log on to our website and see it through our urban forest visual, which had a really fabulous outcome that was unexpected. And it was really just about people being able to write to us and tell us that there was a problem with a tree. Perhaps a branch needed pruning or a tree looked sick and needed help. But in fact, what happened was people started writing love letters from all around the world to our trees. And they are, I wish I had some with me, but I don't. From all around the world. We had people doing the most creative literature, poetry. We had trees writing to us from the US, from Canada, from Europe. So people were pretending to be the tree. So I think that we've used technology in an unexpected way. And that program continues. But more recently, we are partnering with a really fabulous Melbourne tech startup called ClimateSense to use the most contemporary real-time data around temperatures in our city so that we can be a lot more targeted in our response. So there will be areas within our city, like all cities, that are perhaps home to more halved paved concrete. There'll be other more localised meteorological reasons. So we're able to then target our response ahead of and during a heat wave to go out to perhaps have some on-the-ground support, particularly for people who are experiencing homelessness, to hand out our cool kits to people when they need them. But then we can also use this data to think about the infrastructure that we're planning for the future. So I think that that's a really great example of how technology that's being applied in Melbourne can then be applied elsewhere. One other example that I'll share is around cool routes or routes if you're from the US. So cool routes is we've mapped the coolest ways to get through the city rather than the fastest ways, which is, human nature. And it really asks people to rethink their trip. So I think that's a brilliant example, but not everybody's going to log on to the City of Melbourne website to think about the coolest way to get through the city, which is what we've been asking them to do. And in fact, Google have been partnering with us on rolling that out to other municipalities, which we're really excited about. So yeah, technology is brilliant, and partnering with really smart, clever startups and other organisations to meet this challenge is very important.
Well, these very encouraging experiences, I think, set the perfect scene for opening it up for questions.
Asthma. Oh, I remember. Yeah. Just gonna keep this in my hand.
Your conversations are so important for me, but I like the fact that you have the city of Dhaka here, because the kind of things that you need to do in the global south are very different from what you need in the north.
Absolutely. That's right.
And sometimes our leadership gets drowned in that reality, saying, your reality is different, you are developed institutions, we are different. So I think this is very, very important. But, I have two things to say about this. You know about the resilient officers. What you have is, if the person who's doing these amazing new things, like the heat officer, in the first 3 years of your work, if you don't get everybody changed in the way they think, you get ghettoized. I've seen this in a lot of other things. You come in as to spearhead a change, but if you aren't given the freedom to be transformative, which you need politically and administratively, you get ghettoized. And that's the worst thing that can happen to such an amazing thing. The other thing is, you're growing this unique experience. It's never going to cover all the cities. So you need to think of what you can do to help different constituencies pick up the amazing things that you're doing while you grow your network. So as an organization that works with grassroots women, we want to know every single thing that you're doing, which women's collectives can do everywhere, because they can. And I think you have to do this across continents, across regions, because in the urban areas, this is important. And just one thing to tell you interestingly, most of the cities now tell you when it's going to rain heavily, but they never tell you when it's going to be very hot. So that's another thing we need to add, that in the warnings that now come to everybody for weather, you get wind and you get rain, but you don't get heat.
Thank you, Sheila. Here.
Early warning system.
Thank you. Hi, my name's John. I'm from Miami, Florida. And I was just wondering if I could ask each of you where you see value in terms of spending and action in your specific city.
Just pick one, because I want to want to listen from everybody.
We'll go with Tiffany.
Okay. I'm sorry, so can you repeat?
Where do you see the most value in terms of action and spending in Melbourne?
In relation to heat specifically?
Yes.
Look, it's hard to go past urban greening. And our urban forest work is really brilliant. We're planting over 3,000 trees a year, and we plan to increase our canopy by 40% by 2040. And that is really difficult to achieve, because after what was called the Millennium Drought in 2009 in Melbourne, that's where this work was auspiced, and we discovered that, in fact, we were going to lose most of our beloved tree canopy. And we're really lucky in Melbourne. We do have beautiful parks and gardens, lots of historic European trees that were planted when we were first settled by Europeans, which provide excellent shade. But we knew that after the drought, they were aging and that we would lose a great majority of them. And so that we needed to start then in order to achieve the cooling that we wanted to achieve by 2040. And so it's required partnerships with universities and experts in urban greening. It's required whole teams around it. It's required pretty considerable public expenditure, and it requires water. And that's important. You can't just stick a tree in the ground and hope for the best. It's really important, and the unsung hero of urban forestry is integrated water management. So we need to be thinking about, where does this water come from? We're not using potable water. We need to reduce our reliance on potable water. So using stormwater, storing it for the times that we need it. It's actually really complicated from an engineering perspective, because cities are pretty built up. A city like Melbourne is very established. How do you find room for this integrated water management, for the stormwater that we're going to need to? So we've been able to partner with state and federal governments to provide spaces under large parks, for example, but there is so much more to do. So I'd pick that one.
Very quickly, Eleni, on the same point.
Very quickly, there was from Lancet, there was a very important research that came out this spring that said that it was in 98 cities around Europe, and that actually had the data that showed that 1/3 of the people that we lose from heat are because of the urban heat island, of the center of the city that heats up, and that if we increase by 30% tree canopy in our cities, now we know that 30% can actually save, I think, 30% of the people that we lose. So we've actually managed to put the specific data of tree canopy percentage to people we lose. So I just wanted to add that to Tiffany. And just to add very quickly, early warning systems.
Yeah.
Like, this is a low-hanging fruit. It's cheap, and you can actually do it in every city, and you can save lives. And then we can do trees, and then we can look at all of the other things as well. But early warning systems is, I think, boom.
Awareness.
Boom.
Last question, very quickly.
Hello, I'm Sabir Rosario, and I also come from Dhaka North. I work at ECAD. So I would like to reflect something from my master's thesis that I did on heat stress. And my question would be to Ms. Bushra, and we are glad you are here in this conversation. So while I was doing my research, I did a comparative study between the CBDs and the residential areas, where the reports from the residential areas came out to be better than the CBDs. And my study population was the rickshaw pullers, and like they're the outdoor laborers and working more than 10 hours a day. And they have very less access to water, pure water, I would say. So on that regard, they have also put in some solutions, and as you were mentioning, how the solution should come from the very bottom level. So how are you considering that, and as well as talking about the heat adaptation plan? As you know that our neighboring country, India, has a heat adaptation plan, one of it. So are we also considering the same for the city of Dhaka? Thank you.
So we are considering everything that you're saying. I'll start with the heat adaptation plan. So these things take time. You have to consult with all stakeholders and bring everybody to the table, overcome a lot of the bureaucratic, as I keep mentioning, but it's true, and you know this, a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, and reach out to different departments, have that multi-sectoral conversation between the academic circle, the private circle, why am I saying circle? Sector, and the public sector, civil society. You have to have these conversations. And lastly, the vulnerable people, like outdoor workers, construction workers, garbage collectors. One of the things that we're considering for rickshaw pullers is that we know that it's very simple. We identified, when we're still in the process of identifying all of the garages where they run the rickshaws from, and we are working to create a project where it'll be like community outreach, but specifically to the rickshaw pullers, just to have that dialogue, as in, where do you get your water from? Where do you seek shade from? So something that we're considering in Dhaka. In Dhaka, like I know in other places like Melbourne and other places, you're opening the libraries and schools for as cooling centers, right? And these are air-conditioned spaces sometimes. But in the context of Dhaka, that's not going to be possible. So we are thinking of outdoor climate shelters, or outdoor heat or cool spaces where it's heavily shaded and protected from heat. There's access to water, there's ventilation. And the places where, a rickshaw puller can go straight with his rickshaw and not have to leave it somewhere where it can be stolen, right? So how to make these places accessible to the most vulnerable? When you think of tree planting, for me, it's not just urban greening, but for me, it's how to improve shade equity, how to improve tree equity, right? If you're already, like places like Gulshan and Bonani, and sorry, for those of you who don't know, these are affluent neighborhoods, and I'm seeing tree planting, if tree planting is focused around those areas, then even though that is a CBD, right? But you're not really considering places that absolutely don't, like places like Badda, places like, so many areas don't have are so congested, but they're formal housing. They're not even informal settlements. So how do you innovate solutions here to provide shade, to provide safety for outdoor workers, for the most vulnerable? And these are things that will happen, but it will take time, and it will take a lot of discussions, which, you know, is scary because we have to do this quick. We have to have these conversations quickly, essentially, hopefully, and before next heat season even comes close, and have some solutions for the people who are most vulnerable. Okay. Yes.
Why we had to be quick.
Yes. Sorry, Lenny was like, go, go.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think that we all agree on how big of a challenge extreme heat is for cities, how big of a threat it is. But I think we will also agree about the fact that there are cost-effective solutions that can be implemented, like the ones our fantastic group of chief heat officers are putting into practice every day on the ground. And I think that that's the kind of thing that makes us optimistic about the future. And I echo Lenio's optimism on that. I think that we need to support these kind of initiatives. I think we need to be aware that much, much more needs to be done to effectively tackle extreme heat in cities around the world, but we need to be aware that solutions exist and they do work effectively. Thank you so much to all of you, and have a great rest of your day.